Hey there, everybody. Welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Lailani, and it is Sunday night, which means we have another interview. And tonight, I'm really excited because I get to speak with author Michael Grosso, Ph.D. He is the author of many books, but tonight we are going to talk to him about the yoga of sound, the life and teachings of the celestial songman Swami Nada Brahmananda. So this particular book I picked up, I found it interesting because I'm a lover of music. I'm also a lover of the concept and the theory of sort of this idea of like music of the spheres, if you will. And so when I saw this book, I was like, okay, gotta read it, gotta talk to this person. And I'm really excited. I really am. So let's get to know who Mr. Michael Grosso is. Now, not long after obtaining his PhD in philosophy from Columbia in 1971, Michael Grosso had an extraordinary experience in Greenwich Village, New York, that led him to realize that he needed to balance his overly intellectual life with music. He met Swami Nada Brahmananda, a former court musician for the King of Mysore, famous throughout India for being a master of Taan music and sound yoga, as well as for his supernatural control of his body. Mr. Grosso began studying with Swami Nada and found his life profoundly changed. Now, this bio is short, sweet, and to the point, but this person I'm about to bring on obviously has a much more extensive bio than this, and I'll let him explain it himself. Let's bring him on. Hello there, Mr. Michael Grosso. How are you tonight?
I'm very good. And look forward to our conversation. And let me begin, if you will, with some dreams that I had that led to this. Is that all right? Would that be of interest?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay. You know, I actually, all right. It's a dream, and even before the dream, just before I got my Ph.D. at Columbia University, I had an encounter with a UFO. You know, UFOs are in the news lately. You're aware of that. Big stories. And the interesting thing is that I was listening to a piece of music by John Coltrane, The Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, right? That's the name of it.
Great song. Yes.
And I was listening with my girlfriend. It was her birthday. And we were moving and listening to this fantastic music. And so I got up and went to the window, look out the window. I was living in the village at that time, Greenwich Village in New York City. And suddenly, as I'm beating with my leg, the music, you know, moving with music, I look up in the sky and there are these lights come out of nowhere and they start moving around in rhythm with me. And I also see a quick apparition of a man, human man, okay, smiling at me as if he's grooving with the music too. But then he disappeared. And I'm just watching all these lights dancing in the sky. It's impossible, right? What I'm seeing. So I call my girlfriend over. She sees the same thing. And the lights, while I'm listening to the Coltrane, seem to be in rhythm with the music. And anyway, what then happened, the lights stopped dancing in front of us. I was living on the 6th floor, top floor, and they shot about 1 block downtown and perched themselves, the lights, just dancing lights, onto a dome of Our Lady of Pompeii, a Catholic church. So there's a connection. I'm listening to the music, so like whatever it was out there was trying to underscore what's happening. It was saying it's for real. We're here about this music, and we're connected with this religious thing.
Wow.
So then the lights came back where they were originally, danced around a little bit, and Jane and I, our minds are blown, right? and suddenly the lights then shoot in a nanosecond cross town, uptown, and disappear over the Empire State Building in a half a second. So we were completely mind blown, and I said, let's go up the roof, because we were on the top floor, 6th floor. And there's a guy up on the roof whom I had turned on to John Coltrane, okay? A drummer, a young dude, a drummer. And the first thing he says, did you see that? So 3 of us saw this.
Wow.
This isn't a make-believe story. And so that's the story. That was something that had to do with music. And mind-blowing, John Coltrane and spirituality. Okay, the other dream now came a couple of years later. And I have a dream that there's a funny little man who wants to give lessons in music. But he says to me, there are no instruments. No instruments. Okay, what the heck does that mean?
Right.
Well, a few days later, a friend of mine who was a psychotherapist, she said, I met this guy. He's from India, and he's a great master of vibration yoga music. I can take lessons with him on 24th Street in Manhattan, very cheap. I said, oh, that's so cool. I'm really interested, because I was practicing the flute. I was learning how to play the flute myself. So that's what led me to have my first lesson with Swami Nada. Now, about the part that why do I know the dream was about him, is one of the things I quickly learned was that it was not about the instrument. For example, I couldn't afford, at that time, I was just starting to be a teacher, I couldn't afford to buy drums. So I told him that. And he says, you don't need drums. And he started tapping my head. You can practice anywhere. You can practice anywhere. Just hit like this, make sounds, right? You don't have to have an instrument. It's not about the instrument. So that was what the dream was all about. It's about turning your body into an instrument, into a musical instrument. Now, Nada Brahmananda, it turns out, is famous for his ability. He's a master of vibration yoga and a fantastic musician, by the way. And what he was able to do was vibrate any part of his body. And in other words, by the way, this ability to vibrate different parts of his body had something to do with his fantastic health. He lived to be 98 years old. He was only in New York City for a couple of months, and he departed. But later on, I found he went back to India and lived to be 98 and died, I guess, in the turn of the new century. So anyway, that's the beginning of how I met Nada Brahmananda. And the amazing thing was that I took lessons with him partly for the sake, but partly to get to know what kind of a person he was and his philosophy of life. And his idea was that music, and this should be interesting to all of us who love music, that music is the thing that can save us in the Kali Yuga. I don't know if you know that expression. The Kali Yuga in India is not about Kali, the goddess, the night goddess. That's different. But Kali
the cycle
means
of life and death?
Kali, yes. Well, what it is specifically is that Kali is the age of conflict. People, behaving at their worst, at the end of a cycle of history. And
yes.
It certainly seems that way, that we're in the Kali Yuga right now, given the politics and awful things are happening with climate and the increased danger of nuclear war. And then, of course, there's also a positive thing. There's an awakening of people. All kinds of people are speaking up nowadays, coming into their humanity. Black, Native Americans, all kinds of folks that have been oppressed in the past. This is a very unusual period of our history. On the one hand, it's a terribly frightening one, a dangerous one. At the same time, it's a period when it seems to be the soul is opening up. The collective soul of humanity is waking up. Women are finding their voices. All the people who have been oppressed by the white, rich cultures of the world are coming out and speaking and gaining traction, and being to be known, acknowledged, you see.
Yes.
So it's very, so the timing was amazing, you see. So anyway, that's how I got to know. That was how I Nada Brahmananda. That's a quick introduction.
I love it.
And
I
from
love
there
it.
we can go on.
Yeah. So speaking of, just the culture and just the times that we're in too, to kind of link it back to the music, if you also observe the music that we're starting to see now, we're beginning to see more conscious music that has to do with spirituality, music that has to do with elevating, music that has to do with loving thy neighbor, a lot more of this kind of music that is bringing people together, and not about bitch this and drugs that and violence this and you know what I mean. It's music that it's music that unites, that we're starting to see now more than ever, which is really exciting.
And when you think about music, the essence of music, or one of the essential features of music, of course, is harmony. And by the way, the first thing that Nada Brahmananda said to me when I met him, he said, mind control is life. Rhythm is music. It was just 4 words. That's the first thing he said to me when we met. So this idea of spiritual music is also an art where you have to focus. You have to, musician knows that, right? You have to focus. You have to put your mind and your body. The wonderful thing about music is it touches the body. You can feel it. That's why it's vibration yoga. He was the master of vibration yoga.
So you said,
and by the way, during the Renaissance,
isolated each part of his body and vibrated it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes. He could, for example, project vibrations into any part of his body. And if and scientists investigated this, when they put a tiny microphone, let's say he was trying to project music to the top of his head, they put the microphone and you could hear the music, or on his elbow, or somewhere on his foot. They put a microphone and you could hear the music. And so he himself was a musical instrument. That was the point of that dream I had, that we are to become the music, you see, as well as enjoy it and listen to it and explore it. So anyway, at the same time, what I learned from Swami Nada Brahmananda was this is a mental and a spiritual, as you correctly said a few moments ago. It's music about spirituality. It's about coming together with ourselves, with other people, with all of humanity, not just some groups of our own race, color, or whatever. The whole, wherever there's a human being, there's music, there's soul, and there's possibilities, harmonic relationships, not just musical, but for Nada Brahmananda's philosophy of music. Music is life itself. It's art. It's all of the arts, you see, dance, music, whatever brings the soul and the heart of people together, as opposed to abstractions that separate us, ideas that fragment our minds, you see. So this is a very different kind of music. And I frankly did not about this till, this was couple of decades ago that I first met Nada Brahmananda. And it was only recently that I read over, because I recorded all of our lessons. And then when I went home, I would write it from a typewriter. And it was only about a couple of years ago that I decided to look at it again And I said, I'm going to try to publish this book. But guess what? I found a publisher in one day. One day I found a publisher. Although it took a couple of years before the book came out. But so I feel as though I have a mission here to get this idea out. And every day that passes with its problems and all the stuff that we have to face impresses me more and more that we really need a spiritual practice. You know, there's this idea in Indian philosophy called sadhana, and music, sadhana means spiritual practice. And one of my messages in this book is that we all need a sadhana, something, whatever it is. If it's music, that's great. But it could be art, it could be dancing, it could be just your job. Whatever you're doing in life is an opportunity to create harmony, right? To open up relationships, to connect people. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Be a garbage collector. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, without clearing the garbage, where the heck are we, right? We have to honor all the forms of life and all the practices. So this is a universal idea, this concept of music. And by the way, in the years I met Nada Brahmananda, a lot of things were happening in New York City, music-wise. I mean, pop, what do you call it? Yeah, all kinds of things were happening.
It's true.
In the late 70s in New York City.
Yeah.
New York City at that time was a wreck. It was a wreck. There were terrible things were happening.
Yeah.
But oddly, there wasn't that much violence. There wasn't that much murder violence in that period. There was a lot of robbery, and robberies also resulted in people getting the tools that needed to make music, which is an interesting fact of the time.
Exactly. And you know, it's interesting because like when you talk about music and spirituality like this, I love it because I actually have a tattoo on my back of the Indian, the Sanskrit image of the Om. And the reason why I got that tattoo is, for me, when I think of God, or when I think of the great spirit or the great force or whatever, I think of a singer. I think of something that sings things into existence because of the vibrations, because things come out and are moved and created by these vibrations, by these frequencies. So obviously God must be a singer, right? So like, you know, I have that in my mind. But then when you actually do your research in a lot of like occult literature, you know, ancient literature, like Sanskrit literature, Mesopotamian literature, you start to connect these dots that music, frequency, vibration, all of this is all, they're all being talked about at different periods throughout history. And now we get to, you know, 2023, we have quantum science, we have physics, we have astrophysics, and all of them are beginning to support this idea that nothing really actually is solid matter. It's waves, it's vibrations, it's frequencies that exist at different points in time and space. And it blows your mind, because you're talking about ancient concepts here, very ancient concepts, and you're talking about a man who can literally isolate his body and make creation and make movements from his body. Like, what?
Yeah. You know, speaking of ancients, I have this in my book. I talk about it toward the end of the book. The ancient philosopher Pythagoras. Now, he was the guy that discovered the structure of music. You know, I still don't quite understand what he did, but the scales, the mechanics of music. But he formed a group that was, first of all, vegetarian, because he was believed in animal liberation, and every now and then he would correct someone if they would abuse a dog, and he would say, "You don't know, that dog might have been your dead granddaddy who's reincarnated."
Yeah.
But his whole philosophy was based on his whole philosophy of science was based on music and based on the idea that science should lead to peace and unity, unlike the way modern science has evolved in the modern world. I'm not anti-science. Okay, science has done so many great things, but it's also done a couple of things that are not very nice. It's made it infinitely easier to kill each other. Moreover, it has created the absolute threat to the very species of life on Earth. That's the first bad thing that science did. The second bad thing that science has done, it's become a servant of consumerism and capitalism. The technology and of course the technology of consumerism is what has produced the climate chaos. We're in it now, by the way. It's not coming. We're here. It's here, and it's going to get worse unless we change, unless we learn how to live in completely different ways. The head of the UN in New York City, Antonio Guterres, he said, the climate challenge is forcing us to learn how to live in a completely new way. We have to learn how to live in a new way, and in a way that's conducive, first of all, to harmony between human beings, but above all, conducive to harmony with nature. Nature is not just a factory for us to extract goods out of that we can indulge ourselves and make a lot of people very rich. That's what not, the nature's not about that. We are a part of nature. And so we've got a homework assignment. And we need a new concept of science. And at the center of the new concept of science, in my judgment, it needs to be something like what Pythagoras argued for, I don't know, 2,500 years ago. He had this insight. So it's a very challenging time to be alive. And it's terrifying, but also in a sense wonderful, because we're on the threshold of a necessary transformation. Exactly. And hopefully the better part of humanity will triumph over the darker part. But
well then let's talk about that a little bit from the perspective of your Swami here. So you spoke about one of the tenets that he speaks about, which is harmony. And we see that on both a small scale with music scales, but then we also see it on a large scale, like social, political, social environments. So, but what about, has Swami ever discussed with you what happens when your music falls into disharmony or dissonance, or there is a mistake that's made within the music? How does one recover? And if you were to kind of put that onto the socio-political environment, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, it's a challenge. You see, I personally think that we're going to have to go very far into the dark side of this development before large numbers of people wake up and realize that, as Antonio said, we have to change the way we live. And once we understand that, I think the idea of some kind of spiritual practice as being not something for a handful of esoteric people, but something that we all need and that we can all draw upon.
Yes.
It's like if a person, if you're smoking and you get a message that you may have the beginnings of cancer of the lungs, you're going to stop smoking, right? I mean, hopefully. So, well, true. You're going to try at any rate.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced we're going to have to, people waking up all over the world to this challenge. They have to learn to live in a new way. in a more harmonious way between ourselves as human beings and with nature. But we're a long way. There's a lot of resistance on the part mainly of people who make a lot of money, you see, out of exploiting nature, are going to be very reluctant to do this. But when things get drastic, you can be, nobody is safe. I mean, anything can happen. I thought I was living in a nice, safe place because it's very hilly where I live here in Charlottesville. But about 6 months ago, a violent wind came out of nowhere and it knocked a tree down that was about 2 feet thick. And it came within inches of destroying my house and my neighbor's house. And boy, that woke me up. I thought I was safe, right? Nobody is safe. That is both the good news and horrifying news. It's good news because it's going to force us to realize we have to change the way we live. And I'm hoping that it'll be understood that part of that change is to learn to explore the various arts which touch on our humanity and our relations to other living creatures, not just human beings, to trees, to nature, to the seas, the oceans. Yeah. I mean, the state of the oceans right now is horrifying. I mean, it's still so vast that much that is still, viable in the ocean. But now, it's going to have to. Yeah.
When you speak about this sort of unified spiritual practice with sort of these influences of ideas regarding music, harmony, are you also discussing, like, because you spoke about in your book that you go through a process that where you almost how do you describe this in the book? You almost come out of the other end of it with like powers. You call them siddhas or sithas, I think it is.
Siddhis, yeah.
Yeah. So is this a meditation? Is this an activity? Is this a type of music? And can everyone partake in this kind of activity?
Well, the beauty of music is that everyone likes music. I don't know anybody like some kind of music, but what we need is a new understanding of what the spiritual potential and the music is, and above all, you see, to reply to your very pertinent question. It's not going to happen automatically or magically, even though I'm for magic. I like your title there and the way you spell it a little differently. But the music, it's going to take some kind of discipline to change. There's a story in the book, which you may remember, of Nada Brahmananda. He did this thing called Anesteyan, which consisted of 108 days that he spent in a little underground dark room mastering the most difficult skills in his form of yoga. For example, his ability to retain his breath he mastered his breath to such a point where he could, on one breath, he would play for 35 music on the tabla. He did this under scientific and airless chamber. He was been tested by scientists in different parts of the world that he really could do this. Now, I'm not saying we all have to become like Nada Brahmananda, but the point I'm trying to make is when the going is really, we're going to have to be a little more disciplined in the way we eat, in the way we practice our sadhana, whatever it is that we're doing that is designed to help us relate to ourselves. Because if you don't have a good relationship to yourself, people who feel lousy about themselves often do nasty things to other people, right?
Oh,
I mean, that's, yeah. And so this is going to require consciousness, discipline, and if we pursue it, then this question of the CDs or paranormal abilities, deeper sensitivities, more powerful abilities, and even some very unusual experiences. You know, in my book, I do describe a phenomenon that is, you mentioned already, the music of the spheres. Pythagoras is said to have been one of the first persons to have heard the music of the spheres, and that's what inspired him. But actually, it happens to people in the modern world. For example,
all the time,
experience. Often before, exactly, hearing this transcendental music. And then certain people have experiences of music that transform them. I can honestly say that I've had 2 or 3 experiences just listening to music that convinced me while I was listening to that music that there was another world beyond. You know, I was trained by, you know, modern day philosophy and science, which says no life after death, there's no transcendence, all this stuff. Well, they're all wrong about that, because people have these experiences.
Yes.
People hear transcendental music. Or sometimes just the music that you listen to has a transcendental effect on you. So I see the coming months and years very challenging, but also the possibility of a complete renewal of humanity. Either that or we're down the tubes we go in terms of the breakdown of civilized life. And we're going to see lots and lots of breakdowns. And it could be anywhere, anyhow. Unfortunately, it's the poorer people that are going to suffer more than the rich and the comfortable who can move around, but they're not safe either. Nobody's safe from what's coming. That, in a way, is a very sobering idea. Nobody is safe. We are all being challenged to live differently. And music plays a central role. But music, in a broad sense, the muses, all of the arts, painting, music, dance, and anything that you can make an art out of. I mean, just the way you raise your kids, you can make that a beautiful artistic experience to bring the best out of them. As I said, any kind of job that you have, any kind of duty to perform, a doctor, a nurse, or a garbage collector, again, all the roles that we have to play are significant and play a role in this process of renewal. But anyway, I'm optimistic in that regard. I'm excited to think about it. Okay.
Me too. I feel
do something about it.
Yeah, and I feel you're right. You're 1,000% right. It's a whole new perspective on this idea of music, and I think from what you explained of Swami, you are music. And he's a perfect example of that. He can literally make his body make music, but on a more spiritual and even practical level, like, you are music. Every action in your life, every thought has the potential of being harmonious and bringing things together, or it has the potential of creating a lot of chaos and dissonance and going against this sort of music of the spheres that we're trying to create amongst each other and amongst, you know, the universes. So we've talked about balance, we've talked about discipline, we've talked about the fact that we are the music and that our actions can be something that is artful. What are some other lessons that Swami also kind of dropped in there to help you and to help music sort of become a very important player in this new revolution, in this new wave of living? What other things can you tell us about
Well,
him?
yeah, he does say there's a chapter in the book called the Secret of Never Getting Tired. And he, I brought with him a jazz musician buddy of mine to a lesson. And the Swami asked my buddy, his name was John, "How are you today?" And John answered, "Oh, I've been on the road doing jazz and I'm tired." So the Swami, who, by the way, slept 2 hours a night and had endless energy, laughed at him. And he said, "I'm 81 years old. I never get tired." And then so I asked him, it's somewhere in the book, what's the secret of, how do you do this? What's the secret of never getting tired? And his answer will sound, on the one hand, absurd, because the answer was, stop thinking. See, in other words, we think working, we're introducing obstacles from our own mind. Somewhere he says, never let a suggestion that's going to pull you down, enter your consciousness. Never. Always think the best possibilities. And so one of the great lessons here is how to change our attitudes toward things. I mean, there's discipline and practice, that's understood. You got to do that. But you have to have the right attitude also. And so, but part of his answer to my question was, he says, I never think, I never plan, I leave it up to God. If you're not into God talk, that's your business. You can still think about it in terms of being in tune with your subconscious mind. Right. All of the great things in life we're not necessarily conscious of, but we can use our imaginations to tune into things that are, in a sense, beyond reason. And frankly, I believe that the divine, the supreme energy, the highest form of life, is latent in all of us. In all of us, it comes out in different ways, different religions. You know, Swami Nada Brahmananda said this one day. He says, in India, there are millions. All right, I think he gave a specific number. I don't know, 80,000 gods. He says, but they're all one, like the hair on your head. Isn't that a great analogy? Yes. One head with innumerable hairs. So as long as as long as you're a hair, you have a connection with the head, with the inner reality, the highest reality. And so whether you want to call it God or the creative unconscious or inner inspiration, doesn't matter what we call it, as long as we tune into it. Notice that musical metaphor. Tune in. Timothy Leary, whom I used to know, by the way, I met him, used to say, tune in and drop out.
Yeah.
Remember? Maybe, I don't know why. But tune in and drop out. Tune into the world. Tune into everything you see that's around you. And tune into, above all, the creative source that pervades reality. Now, you mentioned Indian religion, the Hindu religions, and I'm very much sympathetic. Although I see all religions, including the Catholic religion that I was born into, very cool, but they're all hairs on the head of the divine.
Facts.
But I'm especially drawn to Hinduism, quite frankly, because of my teacher here was a Hindu. Hinduism is a religion that tolerates diversity. There are different kinds of yoga. There's music yoga. There's bhakti yoga, which is love yoga, or service. The karma yoga, where you try to understand all the different events, the chain of events that have shaped your life. But you can make a yoga out of anything that you do. You can make a yoga of stamp collecting. You do it in the right frame of mind.
Mm.
You can make it an instrument of self-transformation.
Mm.
Sports can be a form of yoga. Um, you name it, you see. But yoga means yoking. It comes from the word yoke, to connect.
Mm.
So that's what we need. We need to learn how to connect, but not just with anything, with the better side of things, of ourselves, of nature. You see. And these are some of the thoughts. I'm sure there's a lot more, but these quick response to your question.
I'm curious to know if, you know, when the music is being played. So this is on the practical side. When the music is being played, does Swami ever talk about that the music in and of itself is something that either attracts or dispels, good or bad events, in the same way that you yourself, as a person who is trying to live a harmonious life and having actions that are mindful, is there things that you attract and or repulse due to that lifestyle? Does that make sense, the question?
Yeah, yes, and the music itself, remember, it is both mental and physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's not just listening. That's why I stress sadhana, practice. I recently hung out with a buddy of mine who thought that he had no sense of music. And we hung out, and I gave him a couple of Irish penny whistles, and we started making and a drum. He had a drum, and before you know it, we were grooving together just by making a little music together. Now, mind you, listening is the heaven. I mean, and especially when we listen with complete heart and complete attention. And if we're with people and in groups, it can be a marvelous experience. But
Yes.
we should also try to make music ourselves. And we don't have to think of ourselves as being professionals. I've been playing the flute on and off throughout my life, and I haven't done it for a while because I had a problem with one of my fingers. I recently had it operated on, and I'm getting back into it.
Mm.
But I'm not worried about becoming a musician or applause. What I
Right. But
do
even like a
value is,
maraca or something to get you in a zone.
yeah, anything.
Anything.
Exactly, exactly. And I'd like to see people, and I've done this in the past, groups of people together to share ideas and also to make music in the simplest kind of way, to come together, to chant together. Again, we don't have to be professionals or stars to draw on the beauty and the healing potential of music and, and all the arts. It's
Mm.
important that we have kind of a practice, whatever it is, and maybe have a couple of them. Why not a couple?
Right.
And that's what we need
And I know I
to
know
bring out the best.
Swami, and I know Swami and yourself too, it's definitely a philosophy that tries to stay very positive. I'm just always curious, I always play devil's advocate in terms of what the opposite is, because I always try and think of what would the like worst person, where would they take it? Because that's just the way human nature is. There's always going to be that one asshole that takes it to some other level, right? So in a sense, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, can music hurt? Can music cause harm? Can music destroy?
Hmm. Well, I suppose if you're Nazi and you're singing some Nazi songs, say, to rouse the violent spirit in you, but by and large, I would say music can only be, for the most part, unless you're really perverted and twisted, it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah.
And I don't see any dark music. Except maybe you could dream up some example, right, where it could be bad because it could arouse people to feel and do things that are crappy. But I don't think that's the way music normally works. You see, or art or anything that's beautiful. You know, I mean, who the Russian philosophers, writers have often said, like Dostoevsky, that, for example, beauty is the same world. Again, it's not beauty. There are all kinds of beauty, right? I mean, it's not. You don't have to be look like Marilyn Monroe to be a beautiful woman, right? I mean, a beautiful woman, a beautiful human being. Beauty has many dimensions, right? And I bump into old ladies on where I live on the mall every now and then. And they're go walking along, and to me, they're beautiful. We stop and we talk, and beauty is what we need in one shape or form or another, you know. And that attracts and draws things together, and also thought. You said something about you like to raise questions. You got to do that. I mean, and when you hear people praising someone whom you know is not so nice, you got to speak up, right? You know what I'm driving at, probably. But
using your voice.
So yeah. And so it's a challenge, and diet is another thing. A big thing with Nada Brahmananda, even though he was a little bit on the chubby side, but he was he never put wrong food in his mouth. You know, I mean, he hardly ate, but he was a little stocky, is the word I would call. But when he would go walking in Manhattan, and he was amazed by everything, because it was new to him. But if a car started to come at him, he moved fast, got out of the way. Anyway, it was wonderful experience that I had with him, and I'm still sort of meaning, profiting. I brought it back to life in a way, because for a couple of decades I just left it there. I forgot about it, doing other things. I mean, I wasn't wasting my time. But now that I've got music back, it's a major part of my life.
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. I feel like it's a game changer. I feel like music and like a dog, music and pets are the life essence of so many. It keeps so many people sane. It keeps so many people full of joy. Those things, music and like a pet or something.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love animals, but I'm living by I used to have them when I was married, and now I'm single, and I can't, especially cats. I'm a cat lover, and all animals, all animals, even dogs. I like.
Me too.
I mean, the other day I had a fly that landed on my computer, and it just sat there, and it stared at me. A fly. I mean, so I decided I'm going to see if I can control it just by talking nice to it. And so I put my hand over it, and he didn't. I mean, just a fly. Flies fly away.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm crazy, or maybe I'm deluded, but I felt that I had a connection with that fly. And it lasted for about 5 minutes. I had a conversation. I told him to get closer to me, and he did. He walked a little closer to me.
Yeah.
But then at the last minute, I made a fast movement with my right hand. He flew away. Couldn't take that. But I actually got bored with it. And that's enough of that guy. But no, animal life, absolutely. And plant life.
and
plant
plant
life.
life, all of it. But you know what? It's all responsive. It's all responsive to the yoga of sound, which is, I'm really glad you titled it that versus the yoga of music, because that's, to me, that's different. Like sound versus music are different things. And so your communication with a fly, for example, creates a connection, but that connection didn't start until a sound was made, until a vibration was made, until the thought, which is a vibration, was had to say, you know what, I'm going to try and do this thing with this fly, you know? And so right there is is your yogic practice. You're doing it mindfully, you're doing it, you know, without causing any harm, you know, and it's all done through these vibrations, through these frequencies, which is awesome. Michael Grosso, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight and sharing your story and talking about the Swami, because, you know, it's interesting, because when we think about swamis, or when we think about yoga, you know, there's so many stereotypical things that come to mind. You know, you think of a guy in a robe with a big baby on his head, you know, sitting cross-legged in Central Park with a giant sitar, you know, or like a snake in a bucket. Real fucked up stereotypes, right? But the truth is that these are people too, you know. And the beautiful thing about living in an urban area is that people from all over the world come to these places, and you get these beautiful cross sections of culture and cross sections of, but it's all connected through a common thread. And so your connection, you know, a Catholic guy from New York City with a Hindu Swami, was music. And that is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight.
Well, I want to thank you for a wonderful conversation. You're a wonderfully sensitive, thoughtful person, and your audience is lucky to have you. So it's been my pleasure. And thank you very much for inviting me.
For sure. So what are you doing these days? Are you thinking about coming out with another book? Are you teaching classes? Are you teaching music? Are you doing your music again?
I'm doing music pretty much by myself. But what I am working on a novel about a student that I had many years ago, just around the same time that I met Nada Brahmananda. These are two things that are from past that I'm making present. And this was a young woman who wanted to be an artist, and she had unusual psychic experiences. Now, everyone told me in those days, you should write like a book about her and like a scientific study of her abilities. And I could have done that, but I didn't. And recently I was looking at the material again, and I said to myself, I'm going to write a novel, because I can say things and do things. And I can say it's a true story, but I'm changing the names and the locale. And it's a wonderful story about a woman who had extraordinary abilities that got her into trouble. And she was as though, yeah, she was so sensitive. Things would happen to her. She would dream of things and they would come true. And people got nervous. And her parents said, "Oh, you can't study art." And she sort of well-off parents. "We want you to get into business. Your father's a businessman." You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she took a class with me and reported some of her psychic phenomena. So I was probably her only friend at that time, because even her boyfriend used her as a kind of she used this expression, a rabbit's foot. In other words, a lucky charm. He had no understanding or appreciation of the inner reality of what she was going through. And a lot of weird things happened to her. So I said, let's make a great novel. And I'll be done. I think make a great movie. And I don't know if up to that point. But so that's one of the things I'm working on. But I also decided
that sounds awesome.
I think it's going to be a good book, and I'm, I'm well in. Okay, I mean, I know the raw material. I have the notes, and I have records of my experience with her. So I'm doing that, and I've always been a painter on and off. I've always been, and I'm into that too. And there are a lot of things planning to do, and I'm getting. There isn't enough time. At the end of the day, when I look at the time to go to sleep, I hate it. There's so much to do.
It's so true.
Really, but and sometimes I can't fall asleep. I have to do something and whack me in the head to get to fall asleep. But it's not because I'm bored. I'm very excited. Very excited by life. So,
that is awesome.
And at the same time, terrified by what all the dark stuff surrounding us. But you keep up your work. You're doing a good job tuning in to all the good people. All right.
Thank you so much. Are there any last words that you'd like to say to the audience before we go? Actually, let me say hello to a few people. Lavetta and Tina, thank you guys so much for always ride or dies. And whoever else is in the chat, make sure you say hello. I know you guys tend to be a little quiet. And for those who are watching on the replay, also, thank you so much. But yeah, Michael, is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before we head out?
There's a million things. At the moment, I feel I've said enough, and but the brain of mine and the mouth of mine could keep on going. But I say, love yourself and love the world. Okay, if you're not in tune with yourself, you're not in tune with the rest of the world. And so go easy on yourself. Go easy. Don't put yourself down. Don't allow suggestions from other people or other scenes to bring you down. Stay on top of it. That's my message.
I love it.
All the best to everybody. Okay?
Thank you so much, Michael Grosso. And thank you all so much for watching us tonight. Make sure you tune in every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, remember that this show and everything that the Magickal Solution stands for is all about how we grow. This is how we grow, you guys. Have a good night.